black thing go from left to right, and I thought, I'm going to die out here. No one's ever going to know. I couldn't believe what my eyeballs were showing me. I'll never forget how evil the eyes were. It was horrible. I mean, I've never seen nothing that evil.
It ran towards me at a rate that I can't even explain. Turned and stared at me, and this look of, I just want to kill you. I want to say it was human, but it wasn't.
He was yelling at me to grab a gun. I was like, for what? He said, just grab a gun. And there's footprints all the way to the door of my house. It had went inside my garage all the way to the door.
911, what are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
See ya!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
You're listening to Sasquatch Chronicles. Check us out online at sasquatchchronicles.com. If you've had an encounter, email me. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you tonight. Going to be talking to Jeff. And Jeff had a very close and personal face-to-face encounter with one of these creatures back when he was 16 years old. And so he'll be sharing that tonight. Then we'll be talking to Vincent, who's had a couple encounters he wants to discuss tonight. Should be a great show. Thank you so much for being here. You know, it's nice to be home. I was down in Texas, and I love Texas. I love the Texans. But there's something about sleeping in your own bed every night. You know what I mean? But it's pretty cool. While I was down there, we're actually working on developing an app. And the app will not only be a player for the show, it'll talk to the website, and it's going to do a lot of cool things. Like when you're driving around, it'll alert you and let you know an encounter happened in the area, feed you that encounter. A lot of cool things coming. So be on the lookout for that. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And if you get a chance, please check out sasquatchchronicles.com. You can become a member and get additional shows. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome Jeff to the show. Jeff, thanks for coming on.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you being here. And your encounter actually took place in Maryland, didn't it, Jeff?
That's correct.
Well, if you would, I'll give you the stage. Tell us what you were doing and just kind of walk us into it. What did you see? What did you experience?
Well, you know, let me kind of give a more of a background so people can kind of visualize what I'm talking about here. So I grew up in southern Maryland, so it's kind of a very rural area, and I grew up on it was a farm I was living on at the time. I was 16, and our farm comprised of like where our house was, where my parents and where I lived, and then my grandparents lived close by, and then we had aunt and uncles. Kind of, it wasn't like a compound, but it was like if you put all the acreage together, it was well over 100 and some acres of land, most of it wooded. Then that land then just butted up against and was adjacent to other people's large swaths of land as well. So there was hundreds and hundreds of, you know, just untouched acreage and just, you know, hardwood forest. And so I grew up there, and I grew up hunting and shooting guns, and it was just kind of just what we did. And I was 16 at the time, and pretty much every day after school, I'd come home in the fall, and I'd go squirrel hunting. I'd grab my .22, had a nice bolt-action Winchester model 77-22, and I'd just take that out there and just blast squirrels. And I usually went with my cousin, but this particular day I had this encounter, I went by myself. And I never was really too scared of the woods. I'd spent a lot of time out there. There would be, you know, some weird stuff we'd have now and then occur, but, you know, we'd just hear things. And then my grandma was always talking about, like, seeing lights over the forest and stuff many, many years before that. So this one particular day, it was a beautiful day. I got home from school. Next thing I got my rifle, got my gear. I'm in the woods. It's probably around 4 o'clock. And of course, this is like in October. And so the sun sets, fairly early. So, but I figure I got an hour and a half or whatever, good daylight to go get some squirrels. And I'm just kind of, hiking through the woods, and I just kind of get lost in thought. Next thing you know, when I finally just kind of come to, I'm kind of in an area of the woods I'd never been in. Like I'd walked deep into the woods. And it was a really big old growth hardwood oaks, like really large trees. So, and where I was, I'd kind of come off this hill and it was kind of a rolling terrain too, by the way. And so I was kind of going down into like a hollow, if that's kind of the best way to describe it. And there was, at the bottom of this was a large grove of laurel. Laurel's like a thick kind of a, like bushes or something like that. Probably the best way to describe it. Yeah. And this laurel stood probably at the height of it. It was probably like 20, 30 feet wide and then about 40 feet deep. And the height of all this laurel was, probably around 8 feet or more high, 8, 9 feet tall. And the funny thing is, when I kind of snapped out of kind of just wandering and looking around the woods, I had this instant like dread, this sensation that something wasn't right. Now, I hadn't seen anything. Everything was incredibly quiet, very eerily quiet. Like I didn't see any squirrels in the trees. Typically, if you just pause for a moment, you'd see these little gray squirrels darting up in the branches of the oak trees and whatnot. But there was nothing. It was just very, very still, very quiet. But I had this real intense dread come over me, like fear, and I didn't know it's freaking me out. And I just had this sensation like something or like somebody was watching me. If that makes any sense. Like my sixth sense was like on fire. Like something's not right here. Someone's looking at me. And I heard some rustling then, like limbs snapping and branches cracking in the middle of this laurel patch. And I was like, and it was heavy enough, footfalls, that I could tell it wasn't a squirrel it wasn't any kind of small animal. And I was like, well, maybe it's a deer. I don't know. But again, this dread, this fear was kind of in me that I was like, maybe somebody's probably in there. And because I'm far enough in the woods, I don't know where I am. But more than likely I'm on someone else's land. I was like, well, maybe it's, one of our neighbors. And I didn't really know our neighbors either. I'm talking about the neighbors of the land that backed up to it. So maybe it's one of them. And so I called out to make-believe people that were with me, kind of to let them know, whoever's in there or whatever's in there, that I'm not alone.
Smart.
Because that's one thing that kind of was overcoming me, is I was by myself. And so I was like, hey, Rick, someone, I think someone's in the laurel. Again, I was just trying to make believe, to try to intimidate whoever was in there. And then when I called out, this football stopped. I was like, okay. And then there was some kind of chatter, this weird chatter. And it's hard to describe. It was almost like a cackling laughter of some it was all I know is it scared the hell out of me. And it heightened this fear of dread. And I instantly had this self-preservation mode. I think I need to get out of here. Something's not right. And so what I did, I yelled at whatever was in the laurel again, hey, just stop, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know what I was thinking. So I already had a round chambered. I took it off safety and I fired above the laurel. I didn't fire into it, I fired above it. Just whoever's in there now is making this incredibly scary cackling kind of sound. I was like, that's enough. And so I fired. And that's when all hell broke loose. So when I discharged that 22 caliber round, everything went crazy then. And then there was this crashing and I could see whatever was in there was coming toward me, because I could see the top of the laurel kind of just swaying back and forth, and you could see stuff moving and it's coming in my direction. And it was incredibly loud. Whatever's in there it's significant in size. And so I was like, I'm out. I just turned around and just ran. And I just ran up this hill, and when I crested the top of it, And this is kind of like the crescendo of this moment. When I crested the top of it, I look down and I see something hairy and black. Now this is a few hundred feet away now. Step out of this stuff and then look up at me. And that was, I'm getting chills thinking about it right now, like telling you. And I chambered around. I cycled the bolt on the rifle. I had a scope on. I didn't even aim. I just shot at it. And I don't know what I was thinking, like a 22 is going to do something.
Yeah.
It just felt like the most kind of, I just felt like that was one way of like, maybe I could scare whatever this thing was. It looked like an ape, kind of like some kind of a monkey, but it was like on two legs. And it was about, I would estimate around 5 to 6 feet tall. So it wasn't like impressively big, but it was black in color. And all I did is I fired the shot, and then I just took off running. And all I know is I was running my heart out. I kept falling down. I was getting my face cut up because I was just running through just like low-hanging branches and trees and whatever that thing was in pursuit.
Oh, so it chased you.
It was coming after me. Oh, without a doubt. And it had. But what's interesting is it wasn't like directly behind me. It was running parallel to me. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it. That when I would fall down, I can't even count the number of times I fell down. And it was getting dark too, so it was like dusk. And so outside there was enough light, but inside this kind of canopy of trees, it was getting dark, and that was heightening my fear even more. And I was just utterly terrified, and I was just running and falling down. But when I'd fall down, I could hear it, but it was like parallel to me, and it from what it sounded like, it was probably 100 or so feet, like, but it wasn't like coming. Here's the thing: if it was in pursuit of me, when I look back, it would have caught me. That's for sure, because it managed to catch up and was running parallel to me. And the problem is that when I was heading out, and it took me, I was probably running 10 or 15 minutes. I was that deep in the woods, and this thing was like this long, endless terror. It was like I really think I was going to die. I thought like. And I knew the trailhead where this trail exited out into our field next to my house. If I had taken that, this thing was going to like intersect with me right there. So I don't know if the thing knew that, but all I know is like I can't go that way. So I just kind of rounded around this last hill and then kind of emptied out into another field that was behind my house. And as soon as I emptied into the field, I turned around, I cycled another round, and I fired again into the woods. I don't even know what I'm firing at. I just fired into the woods again. And then I just bolted for the house. I ran inside. My face is all cut up. My hands are all cut up. I'm crying. I'm bawling. My mom's like, what is wrong? She's like, she's freaking out now because I'm like in a panic. And my middle brother gets all fired up. He's like, go ahead, get this thing. He grabs a shotgun, and he heads out. He heads out to the field, and he just fires some rounds into it. And I reload my rifle. I do the same thing. But I never heard. So when I came out, I can't recall if it clearly stopped. It didn't come out into the field. It didn't like pursue me that far. But I often wondered if it was just toying with me. But so anyway, my brother and I kind of shot into the woods. Now it was dark, and then we went back inside the house, and my mom calmed me down. She cleaned me up. She pretty much said, it's probably just a black bear, da-da-da. I'm like, this was no black bear. This looked like a monkey, like an ape is what it looked like. And I said it was on two legs. It was running off. Well, here's the thing. I don't know if it ran on four legs, by the way. All I know is when it stepped out, it was standing on two legs. And it didn't have a muzzle like a bear. And the chatter before is I've never heard anything like it until I started listening to some of the stuff you've been playing with people and hearing some of these vocalizations, kind of some of this like chatter. It sounded like, but then there was also kind of this weird laughter too, or cackling. That's the best way I can describe it.
That's really terrifying.
Yeah.
Was there any details that you remember? I realize you're at a distance and you're trying to leave with your life. Was there any real details that you remember beyond it was kind of a tall monkey or gorilla?
Yeah, so that's a great question. You know, when I go back and I think about it, I'm wondering if I'm interjecting, like how good. I feel like I could see its face, like in my mind's eye, but I'm wondering if I just planted that in there because it was such a distance away. Like I don't recall. I think I know what it looked like, but at the distance I was, I could. But here's the thing: when it stepped out, it took a step and it stepped out, and I could tell when it kind of lifted its like it kind of when its spine became more of erect and was coming out of this laurel, I could tell it was looking at me. But as far as like seeing its eyes, it was too far away for me to get any kind of real particular detail on any facial expressions or teeth or eyes or anything like that. It just like had like looked like long black hair.
Yeah, that's interesting. And there's no monkeys. There's no apes in Maryland. They'd never survived the winter. And that's interesting. You heard the chatter too. Did it remind you of the Ron Moorhead, the Sierra Sounds?
Yeah. When I've heard that, that's kind of what it reminded me of. Kind of this, it was like this cackling laughter. And that, again, that's the only that I have to say that because that's what instinctually comes to me when I hear it. But it's not like anything I'd ever heard before. But it was scary. And I could tell once I fired that round over the laurel, it pissed it off.
Yeah,
and
it's odd behavior, isn't it? I mean, any other wild animal, if that would have been a bear, for example, and you fired off a shot, that bear would have been gone. It would have been gone in a flash.
You see, that's my instinct was I'll just discharge a round over it and thinking that whatever's in there will stop and reconsider what it's doing. If it was a person, and the thing is, looking back now, me even discharging around, if there was a human being in there, that was clearly irresponsible of me to do that, by the way. But there was this intense fear, this intense dread that it just was like this instinctual thing that I did, thinking that was going to protect me, keep me safe. And looking back now, and the thing is, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if had I done nothing, I just left, would it have ran after me? Or I have no idea now. I mean, but at the time, it just felt like the right thing to do to discharge the round over it. But when that thing came out, it was instinctual to like fire a shot at it.
I don't blame you. I probably would have too, to be honest with you. And, and I realize it sounds reckless to the audience listening, but I probably would have done the same thing. I would have fired off a round kind of in the air. And, any normal wildlife is going to run. And that's why I was saying in the past on the show, I'm not so sure that rifles scare these things like people think they do. They say they know what a gun is. Well, who knows if they know what a gun is or not. But I don't think guns terrify them as much as people think, because there's a lot of situations where guys will go out and start shooting and these things don't run off. They'll stay. They might hide or get down low, but they don't run off. It's bizarre behavior.
I don't know. All I know is, me discharging a .22 caliber is, that wasn't going to even do anything to it. I guess it depends if I took careful aim and tried to shoot it in the head and things like that. But I was like panicking and shaking. And when I just shot at it, I wasn't even aiming. I just shot in its direction, and then I just ran. What's curious is that, I think I told you some of my reservations about even talking about this is because instantly after that, I was like, this must have been like a Bigfoot or some kind of an ape or something related to that. But at the time, I'd only heard about. I thought anything that's like that, it lives in like the Northwest. Like there's nothing there. So my mom constantly said it was a black bear. My dad just dismissed it, didn't think anything of it. Again, kind of went along with my mom, thinking it was probably this was a black bear. Because there's black bears that would come around now and then. There wasn't a large population of them, but they were around. We knew that. My brothers and sisters soundly mocked me, and as did everybody else. So I just stopped talking about it. My sister still today, I'll go back and she goes, so tell us about the time, and of course in a kind of a condescending tone, like making fun of me. And so I don't, it's just something I experienced. But what the fascinating thing is my grandmother, who had lived on the farm for like 50-some years, often said that there were other incidences that had happened over the years. Like she remembers one time behind her house where something blazed through the edge of the field near the forest and just ripped down huge trees. And again, they go back, it must have been a bear, and my grandma was like, ain't no bear did that. And then she actually believed me that I saw something back there. She was the only person in the family who actually believed that I saw something.
Yeah, and that's too bad.
Like that wasn't like what everybody thinks it is. And she often would tell us about like seeing lights over the woods too.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Was she talking about UFOs, or was she talking about balls of light, or what? How did she tell you about these lights? Did she ever go into any details about them?
Yeah, she said she woke up. I think this would have been probably like the late 1960s or the 1970s. And she said she was awoken one night, looked out the back toward the forest, and saw like a disc or something hovering and illuminated the entire sky. But specifically, like the bottom of it was lighting. It was like casting light down over and it was a good distance away, but it was still over our woods. And she also talked about seeing like balls of light in the woods too. Again, I've always been curious about that. I don't know where I necessarily stand on UFOs personally, so I always thought that was curious that she mentioned that stuff. And as the years have gone on, and as there's more readily information concerning, Sasquatch or whatever these creatures that exist, that there seems I've heard about correlations with them and like balls of light and things like that. And I don't know what to make of that, but my grandmother seemed to have seen things in the woods, and there were other instances where things had happened near the farm. So
yeah,
like one time she mentioned something got into the chicken coop one time and just raised all hell and like killed a bunch of chickens, like ripped their bodies apart. And again, that would have been well before I was born.
Yeah, I kind of agree with your grandmother. It is strange. A lot of times with, and there's been a few people I've had on the show where they have great encounters, and they're like, I also need to tell you about these lights I saw right before I saw these creatures, but I don't want to say that on the air. And I don't know if there's a correlation. It sure seems odd. Even some UFO sightings, people see UFOs and then they see these things. And so it's, is there a correlation there? I don't know. You'd be almost arrogant to say, yeah, no, there's no correlation between the two, which I've done in the past. But, now I'm not so sure. I really don't know. Same thing with the balls of light. I never gave anyone that said that a second thought until I saw them, which is, kind of an a-hole thing for me to do. But, yeah, I've seen them. I don't know what to make of them. I don't know what they are. And it was in the area where I had my encounter, right where we filmed it. And so, are they related? I don't know. That's interesting, though, about your grandmother. The other thing, too, Jeff, with your encounter, and it's all fun and games, it's all laughable until you run into one, and then all of a sudden it's not funny anymore. But, with your encounter, the behavior is spot on. They don't run you down. That's not how these things do it. Most of the time, they don't run you down. What they do is they pace you out off to the side, which is very odd. And I don't know if that's meant to scare you out, or I think you and I both know that thing could have run you down, no problem. It could have caught you and had its way with you if it really wanted to.
Totally. Oh, no, without a doubt, because it caught me because it was parallel to me, and in like no time, it was like. I mean, I'm not laughing at this as a laughing matter. It's just I look back on it and I'm thankful that I'm here, because it was I literally at that moment thought I was going to die. I was in such a pain. I thought my heart was going to explode. I was just like breathing and my heart was just racing. And it felt like I couldn't get out of those woods either. It was like I was so deep in there, and it took me forever to get out of there. And it felt like it went on forever.
Yeah,
there's no doubt in my mind that I think that it was just taunting me, or it like I said, like I mentioned, it clearly could have caught me without a doubt, easily, all day long. But it for some reason it chose not to. The thing is, there were no other encounters after that, though. Like I've heard other people say, well, then once you kind of like engage these things, sometimes like they like to come back and go to the house and taunt you and things like that. We never had anything. I don't know if it was being territorial and I was kind of in its space. And, I don't know if it, like, in that huge, thick grove of laurel is where it bedded down. I don't know. Maybe I'd come up on its, like, where its shelter, where it lived. I have no idea. I know one thing. I never went back there ever again. Ever. And I never went hunting by myself ever again.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Well, the other thing, too, it does feel like it's toying with you a little bit, like a cat playing with a mouse, where it doesn't kill a mouse right away, but it sits and toys with it. But in this situation, I think basically it was trying to make sure you left. And going out and blasting your guys' guns afterwards, might have thought, well, that's a bad idea to go up to that house because there's a bunch of guys coming out with guns and firing off. So that might have prevented it from coming up to the house and screwing with you guys. It really is a fascinating account to me. When I think about, you're a 16-year-old kid, and then that thing really wasn't that big. It was probably 5-6 feet, is what you said. It's
yeah.
It was probably a younger one, kind of just screwing with you.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is my oldest brother. He's 7 years older than I am, and at the time he worked for the Department of Natural Resources down there, and was in law enforcement and as a park ranger. He told me it was months later. There were people calling in because he knew a lot of people that worked for the sheriff's department, and they had gotten calls that there were these, and it happened. Happened in like a batch, like there's this window of time where people were reporting sightings of something just like this, and it was a little further south than where we lived, and like this one woman was in her farmhouse, looked out the kitchen window, looked out where her cows were, and saw something like what I just like that standing in amongst her, cows. But what's interesting about that, when I heard that, I was like, well, why didn't the cows run away? They didn't feel fear. But there was another one where a deputy saw one run across the road, and there were several instances that followed, kind of my encounter. And my brother then kind of told me, he's like, well, I'll just let you know, this might bolster your case, blah, blah, blah. But, he told me that. So I don't know if they're related. I don't know, or there's just more of them there.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's really fascinating. The other thing, too, with people's encounters I haven't been able to figure out yet is when right before, you'll always hear people say this, right before they see him, they have this over sense of dread, fear, I'm being watched, I'm in danger, which is odd because I think with your normal wildlife, I don't know that we get that. Maybe, I guess, if a cougar is stalking you, but not how people describe it. I know what you're talking about with that over sense of fear, get out of, it's like your inner voice going, get out of here, get out of here, get out of here. And it's bizarre with these things because most people describe that right before they see it. It's
so spot on. Whenever I heard other people describe this to a T how I felt. And I'd never in my life ever felt like that before. Ever. And it was incredibly terrifying. Like my life was genuinely in danger. And it is odd because I did so much hunting before. I would go back in the woods by myself sometimes, and sometimes I'd get spooked by this or that, but nothing to that extent where it there's being scared and then there's being utterly terrified.
Yeah, and it's bizarre.
I couldn't account for what it was until, moments later, there's all this chatter, and that really elevated it. And then everything else, it was the pinnacle of fear in my life.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of people say that. It's this overwhelming fear and there's no reason for you to feel that way. It's not like you've seen anything, you haven't really heard anything. But it's like our spidey senses kick on, and it's like, get out of here. It is. It's fascinating. In the encounter, I know it's a terrifying moment in your life, but there's a lot of behavior there to look at. Especially when you fire a shot at it. Obviously, you didn't hit it. I'm assuming you didn't hit it, but you think that'd be enough to get something to back off, and this thing didn't. No. And I heard the thing. I don't know if it didn't want to attack me because it did know I was armed, or again, I've played it in my head over and over and over again, all the kind of scenarios that could have been, and or why things didn't
go the way that I imagined I was going to get run down. I literally imagined I was going to get run down and just killed. And it knew I was terrified because I was crying and screaming and just doing whatever I can to get out of there. And literally it was like right out of a horror movie where I'm tripping over everything, it seemed like too. It was bad. It was a very horrible. I wouldn't want anyone to experience it. It's terrifying.
Yeah, it is terrifying to run into them. I was curious, though, what your theory was on what these things are. You know, your own personal opinion. If someone were to ask you, well, what is Sasquatch? What would you say to them?
You know, what's interesting is there was always this thing I thought before that, again, I think I was mentioning that I thought this was something that only existed in like the Rocky Mountains or out west, that kind of thing. And that nothing like that existed anywhere in the East Coast. And I always thought it was just some kind of mystical kind of creature, right? What's interesting is after my encounter, I had terrifying, I had this urge of trying to figure out what it was and what it possibly could be. And just after the research I've done over the years, just trying to also make sure, did I truly see something? Was I losing my mind or something? Like, did I make am I making this up in my head? Like, was it a bear? Like, so I had all these questions. So I felt like this hunger for knowledge, is like to validate that I didn't like see things or I wasn't going crazy. And through all that, I've just come to think that these are some kind of a primate or something that exist out there. But then my logical side and pragmatic side says, if it is, how come we haven't captured one yet? Or how come one hasn't been brought in yet? And that's the thing I know what I experienced, I know what I saw, and just like so many other people like you know what you experienced, you know what you saw, but when you try to tell people, they think you're crazy. And if it is some kind of a primate, again, then the questions go, well, why hasn't anyone ever shot a video of it? Look, everyone's got a phone on them now. It's like, all I know is I don't know. I can't answer that. I just think it's probably some kind of a primate that exists out there. And I think they're highly intelligent. They have the ability to, because that's where they live. That's their domain, and they know how to navigate the wilds and the woods and the forest and can hide really, really well. But yeah, so I hope that answers it. I think it's just some kind of a primate.
Yeah, I mean it's a good answer. I mean it's hard to say because no one has one, even though sometimes people act like they know exactly. You know, you hear some of these researchers be like, oh, it's this or it's that, and they don't know. No one really knows. But and that's why everyone thinks that's a loaded question, but it's not really a loaded question. There's no wrong answer to it because no one really knows. But it's nice to get people's opinion on what they've seen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What's interesting, Wes, is that I think that there are, again, just because of what I saw, and then I think there are different types. I think what I saw isn't necessarily, what that video that was shot a long time ago, that shows that.
Oh, the Patterson-Gimlin?
Yeah, that thing. Yeah. And I think there are different, when I just, in my mind's eye, when I go back to that day and I look down at it, it seemed more like chimp-like. Again, if that makes sense, it reminded me more of like it had the kind of black hair. Almost like people have talked about like something called a skunk ape or something before.
Yeah, down in Florida.
I think they're down in Florida. Yeah, and it just reminded me more ape-like, more chimp-like, that kind of black hair.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there's a lot of people in Texas to where, they'll say it looked more like a chimpanzee, but then you hear weird descriptions like Todd Standing has a picture of one, and it's kind of got a beige face, and it looks very odd. And I had a guy in Texas one time call me, and he goes, that picture, that's exactly what I saw. And so, that, I don't even know what to make of that thing. Everyone calls it a Muppet, but This guy in Texas who was in law enforcement, he goes, that's identical to what I saw, which does not fit Patty at all. The Patterson-Gimlin creature, or sometimes other people's. And it is strange that there does seem to be different types of these things. I would agree with you. I'm just glad you got out of there with your life, especially, when you're terrified, you're going to fire at things. That's what, the worst thing you can do is put a gun in someone's hand who's terrified, because they're going to start shooting. And I don't blame you for starting to shoot. I would have done the exact same thing. I would have fired at it too, and I realize you and I both know a 22 is probably not going to take it down. But
no.
It doesn't.
I'm sure some of your listeners are probably like, what an idiot, he fired. All I can tell you is I'm not advocating to one way or the other. I'm just telling you what happened, what I did as a 16-year-old.
Yeah, of course.
Terrified kid.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not advocating for one way or the other. I'm just telling you how it was and what happened, but that's just how I reacted. I felt like it was the one thing I could use to defend myself. That was, and that's what I did. I fired at it. And again, had I had more bearing and more kind of courage, I could have truly aimed at it and shot it, but try to take it down. But I didn't. The urge to get out of there was overwhelming. And again, I think that going back to, all the years I'd done, like hunting and knowing wildlife, and again, you fire at something, most wildlife typically doesn't want anything to do with us. They want to stay away from us because they know we're predators. We're the predator,
Yeah, even a black bear will scatter from you. I've never had a black bear stick around. Every time I've come across, and I haven't come across very many, but every time I've come across a black bear, man, they hear you. There was one time where I chambered around, and I was pretty far away from this thing. And I wasn't going to shoot this thing, but I chambered around. It heard me chamber around and scattered the moment. I didn't even have to fire off a shot. It heard it and took off. So I think most creatures will. I'm just glad you got out of there with your life, man. That's a terrifying encounter. It really is. And I know it's been tough for you. I know people have laughed at you, but how the creature behaved and what it did is spot on with their behavior. That's exactly what they do. I'm just so happy it didn't run you down, because being a 16-year-old kid, you would have been easy pickings for this thing. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing it.
I appreciate you having me on. I think I sent an email, just even if I hadn't been on the show, just actually sending the email when I initially sent it, just felt good, felt liberating in some ways. And I think your podcast is amazing because it gives people like us an outlet for and in a safe place. I don't use that word, safe space, but a place that we can tell about our encounters and without being mocked or ridiculed. And so I think that's important because there's just too many. I know what I saw, and there's too many other people out there that see these things, and you provide a great place for us to do that. So I thank you for having the podcast.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Jeff. I really appreciate it. And while we take a break, I want to thank a few sponsors. I want to thank MyBookie. Speaking of that, I wish I would have bet on that Chiefs and Browns game today. I saw my Chiefs slaughtered the Browns. Sorry to the people in Cleveland. You knew it was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen. Gosh, I wish I put some money on that. Join now, and MyBookie will match your deposit dollar for dollar. Use promo code Chronicles to activate the offer. Visit MyBookie online today. That's MyBookie. And don't forget to use the promo code Chronicles when creating your account to claim the bonus. You play, you win, you get paid. And if you get a chance, check them out. It's actually a really cool site. You can do a lot of in-game live betting. You can bet on football. You can bet on anything on that site. A lot of fun. Thank you to MyBookie. And the other sponsor is Empty Faces. Do you love horror and scary movies? Well, now you can bring the mystery of the paranormal home with you. This would actually make a really cool gift for someone. They sent me the box, and it comes with all these different items in the box, and you have to solve the mystery. And it's kind of an ongoing storyline as you're trying to solve the mystery. Empty Faces is a monthly subscription where you become immersed in a paranormal investigation and try to stop unspeakable evil. Each month, they will send out clues, objects, and ciphers that you can actually use to solve the mystery in real time. It's actually really cool. And the other part that I like about Empty Faces is I got stuck in one part. There's actually an online community, believe it or not, and you can swap theories with people who are at the same point you are in the storyline. And, I had one of my friend's daughters look at it, and she must have messed with that thing for days. She loved it. So I think it would make a great gift with Christmas coming up. Right now, just for our listeners, you can go to emptyfaces.com/Sasquatch for 10% off your first box. They only accept 200 members per day, so hurry to take advantage of this offer. That's emptyfaces.com/Sasquatch for 10% off your first box. emptyfaces.com/Sasquatch. Thank you so much to Empty Faces for sponsoring the show. And let's jump back to the show. I want to welcome Vincent. Vincent, welcome to the show. How are you, man?
How's it going, Wes?
Things are good, brother. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, and I know there's a couple encounters we need to get to. You're out there kind of on the Maryland-Pennsylvania border, and you've actually had a few encounters where rocks are being thrown at you. But prior to all of that, you started going out looking for these things. What made you go out and look for them?
Yeah, I've always had a fascination with Sasquatch. I mean, I couldn't tell you from when it actually started. I guess over the years, it just my fascination of, thinking about, Sasquatch and just the mystery of it. I think it just sparked my curiosity to go out into the woods and kind of just, search around.
Definitely nothing wrong with that. And I know you've gotten your answer on a few of these occasions. But if you would you, let's just kind of start from the very beginning, kind of the first incident that took place, and then we can move to what happened with you and your girlfriend.
Yeah, I guess the first incident actually happened when, to start at the beginning, when we used to go up to the woods a lot. We would listen to some of these shows. It was more YouTube videos on, just different things that were, people were saying, like, what they would experience in the woods. And I kind of noticed in the woods that there were tree breaks all around. And I thought that was so weird because, I had no idea that on the East Coast or even in Maryland that, that was a possibility that, these animals might be, in the woods. So, we go up there more frequently, over the years. I think we started about 3 years ago going up into the woods. And we noticed the tree structure. These tree structures were everywhere, Wes. And, we started going up there more and more. And the first time we actually had an encounter was, I would say about 3.5 years ago. We were up there and we were kind of driving real slow in the woods. And to be quite honest with you, I didn't really have Sasquatch, on the mind at the time. And what was crazy was we had a deer. It was running across the path, and you're able to drive across this path. And the deer just completely stopped, maybe 50 feet in front of the car. And it kind of, from what I can tell, it was kind of listening up for something. And then its ears went back, and then it darted backwards across the path. And I just thought that was kind of weird. I was thinking, why would that animal just stop, when it was in direct route across the road, and stop and kind of just, go completely backwards? It was just kind of a strange thing that I thought. And I was like, I think this thing, I really didn't know what to think about it, really, to be honest with you. But we were basically at the point of stop in the woods inside our car, and the windows were rolled down. You could actually hear something walking, right up to the side of the car, but you couldn't see what was there because at the time of year it was about spring, summerish, and there was there was a little bit of bushes overgrown, I guess weeds or whatever it was, but you could actually hear 2 feet walking up. And you could hear it shuffling a little bit. You could hear it crouching down. And I was like, man, this is so weird. And your heart starts racing. You're like, man, there's something up here with us. And my girlfriend was in the passenger seat, and she was. What's kind of funny was because before I knew anything, I was doing yells and doing some weird, doing calls and things like that. And she was looking at me and she was, now's your time. And Wes, I didn't want to say anything because I was kind of freaked out because you could hear that there was something. You could hear the foot pads of this thing's feet. You could hear it moving. Like you could hear the pads. It was pretty unreal, to be honest with you. It crouched down, and then it was probably us and let's say Sasquatch was sitting there, and it was kind of looking at us for probably about 30 seconds, and then you could hear get up and kind of walk off in the direction of the deer, which was super freaky. And I was just like, you could actually feel like there was something actually looking at us. So you couldn't see it, but it was looking right at us, and you had the feeling of it looking at us.
It is a little terrifying when you hear them just kind of walk around and trying to make sense of it. You know what I mean? A poacher wouldn't make that sense that time of night because he's not going to be able to pick off a deer in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. Well, it's crazy because if you think like people being up in this area, you'd have to have a flashlight first off, just to see your way through the woods, and you're not really walking around in the woods by yourself without any kind of like light. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. I'm curious. Tell me about the next incident that took place.
Actually, the next incident. We were in Gettysburg. We were camping in Gettysburg at the KOA. It was for my girlfriend's brother's birthday, and we ended up getting a cabin, like one of those like little like I don't know what to call them, like just lean-to cabins or whatever they rent out at the KOA. I was actually sleeping, and my girlfriend had to get up and use the bathroom, so she didn't feel like walking all the way over to where the restrooms were, so she just kind of did it right outside of the cabin, and Wes, I guess it was kind of the really weird night. It was a little bit foggy, and like all of a sudden, we heard like this howl, and I wasn't sure what it was. It was really weird, and it definitely. We go back, and I was listening to a few of the different calls that are on the internet, and the one that sounded like it was the Ohio call, and it was. Seriously, Wes, it was so loud, and it went on for like 3 or 4 minutes, like just kept going. There's no fire stations within like a quarter mile of the area. It was just really weird. I mean, I don't know how to explain that, to like elaborate on how it actually sounded to people, but I mean, the closest thing that I can relate it to was the Ohio howl.
Yeah, and for the audience listening, here's the Ohio howl. It does sound like a siren, doesn't it?
It totally does, man. It's the pitch is off, but it definitely sounds like a siren.
Yeah, it's bizarre. So what did you guys do next? You guys just leave after you heard that?
No, we ended up sticking it out through the rest of the night. I tell you what though, when she was done, because it started making that noise while she was using the bathroom outside, and she came bolting inside the cabin like I've never seen anybody run inside of anywhere. She like came in there like 100 miles an hour, and I was like, what the heck is that? And she was like, I don't know what it was, but it like the whole night it was like real creepy out, man. It was there was like a blue hue fog going on outside. It was like just getting ready to go on to like winter time. I think it was in September. I'm pretty sure it was in September. It was like kind of cold out, but there was like a weird fog in the night, and it was just a real creepy situation to be in. Because all I did was I didn't think about like getting my phone out and recording it or anything like that. I was just kind of listening to it, and it was just real bizarre.
Yeah, it sounds like it. What did your girlfriend think?
She was just freaked out, to be honest with you. She it was so close, Wes, that I was sure that everybody else had to have heard it at the KOA that was camping there that night. So I walked up to no, what was crazy is because we had people come in from late at night there was a cabin. We were in the front cabin, and there was a cabin behind us. These people came in so late at night, and then they left at like 5 or 6 in the morning. They were like nowhere to be seen like the next day. And I thought it was loud enough that everybody at the KOA could have heard it. So I walked out to like somebody like going back up into like the front office area. I said, "Did you hear that last night?" And people were like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "What? How did nobody else hear that?" Or maybe nobody was paying attention to what it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Sometimes people are more alert at night than others, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm definitely a night owl.
I know guys that the moment the head hits a pillow, they're out. They're done for the night. They aren't going to wake up. I mean, God himself can come down and wake some people up that I know. So, I mean, I get it. But, you know, you hear that Ohio howl, and it's like, well, what is that? You know what I mean? It's like, what the heck? And it's interesting because I've heard people describe the same thing on the East Coast where you're at, in Texas, in California. They're like, that's exactly what I heard. And, you know, it's something for the skeptics. You know, if it's just some guy in Ohio that came up with this, well, why is everyone else hearing this? And I've had recordings from Texas that were very similar to that, and recordings from Pennsylvania that were very similar to that. Tell me about the time you and your girlfriend were in the car. Now, this happened across the border from Pennsylvania, correct? Right on the border of Maryland and Pennsylvania?
Yeah, this is about 3 weeks ago. We were up driving, and I think it's called Towndale State Park. And we went up there because just recently we've been getting like harassed by the state police or the forest rangers. I don't really know what to call them, but just recently we've been, you know, kind of getting kicked out of the woods after dark. So we decided that, hey, maybe if we go somewhere else that we won't be, you know, maybe they're not so strict in other places. So we ended up driving probably about an hour north of us into this area. And we got there probably about 7 o'clock at night. So we were just driving through the woods, checking it out. Just like, we were basically just exploring, honestly. We were just kind of looking for something to do. And I definitely like going into the woods. So we were driving this, I guess these gravel roads going up into the mountain. And I noticed that there was stick structures and tree breaks like all over there too, and I was kind of excited about it. Honestly, I was like, "Oh, okay, we got something here as well. This is really interesting." So that night we were driving, and I guess there was another car, and maybe quarter of a mile in front of us, and it was kind of on a straight, and these people were slowing down while they were driving. They were driving pretty slow. And I could see like something crossing the path behind their car. They were like whatever was walking, you know, back and forth behind their car while they were slowing down. I was like, "Holy crap! Did you see that?" I was talking to my girlfriend. Her name's Laura, and I was just like, I was just kind of like amazed that there was like something like that noticeable. So later on in the night, we were driving a little further up in the mountains. And right outside of the view of the headlights, you could see something like standing way off in the distance, and it definitely looked like it was like a human figure. How tall, I couldn't tell you, but it was definitely a silhouette of some sort of hominid, you know, just standing there. So, you know, I tried to drive up a little faster, but by the time we got there, it was, you know, it had already like, I guess, scooted into the woods. So we just kind of went, you know, we were just kept driving through the woods, checking it out. It was around like 12 o'clock at night. We found this little area where you could pull the car in, and it's kind of tucked back a little bit off the road. So I guess if anybody was driving through there, they wouldn't be able to see you. Or like, you know, I was kind of thinking like, okay, if the state police or park rangers come through, you know, they won't be able to see us over here. So we were kind of tucked back a little ways. And to be quite honest with you, I was listening to your show earlier in the night before we were getting ready to go to sleep. And just having those incidents, I was getting kind of freaked out because I was like, man, you know, there's something up here with us. And I wasn't like 100% sure about like, you know, sleeping up there in the car or anything like that. And then it was probably about 1:30 in the morning. I was I kept hearing something hit the car, and I was like, I don't think it was big enough to actually like. It wasn't distinctful of like a big enough rock to be like, okay, that's that's what's hitting the car. I thought it was like maybe acorns or like leaves hitting the car, and I kept looking in the rearview mirror of the car because I thought I saw like something moving back and forth, across the path. Or wherever, or behind the car. I thought I kept seeing like shadows or something like that, and I was trying to like relax and like, all right, like, maybe I'm overthinking this, or I just needed to settle down. You know what I mean? I kept telling my girlfriend, listen, like, if anything else gets thrown at the car, like, I don't care what it was, because I kept looking like from the driver's seat over my right shoulder to the back of the car. I kept trying to look out the window to see anything, but I couldn't see anything. So I told her, and she was like halfway asleep at the time. I told her, hey, listen, if anything else hits the car, we're out of here. All right. So meanwhile, Wes, I felt like there was something like had eyes on me over my left shoulder while I was sitting in the driver's seat. I leaned the seat all the way back, and I was trying to relax. I was already like high alert as it was, getting freaked out because I could totally feel something like right next to my like head or something like that. It was just a really weird feeling. No longer than like a minute later, a rock comes flying in and cracks my window. I don't know how big the rock was, but Wes, when that happened, man, I felt the blood drain from my body. Like I was starting to freak out at the time. I was like, I don't know how to explain like exactly how I felt. The feeling felt like I was like moving in slow motion underwater because I started panicking so hard, and I was like, my heart was like through my chest beating. And then I tried to start the car, and the car wouldn't actually, it wasn't firing at the time because of the push start. You push your foot on the brake pedal and then push the button. And at the time, the car wasn't, like I hit the button like 2 or 3 times and it wasn't starting. And so then, like, I really, really, really started panicking at the time. I was like, oh my God, we're about to die here in this situation. And I'm actually trying to talk to my girlfriend and tell her, like, the car won't start. And, like, I guess she told me because she was coming out of, like, her sleep that she said it sounded like she wasn't sure if she was hearing me wrong or if I was actually like sounding really weird, because I felt like I had like a bubble in my throat and like things were going in slow motion at the time. And I was trying to tell her, listen, the car won't start right now. I don't know. It was just a really weird situation that we were in at that time, because I already felt like there was something already looking at us, and it only just legitimized what I had been feeling like, I guess, when we were pulled over in this turnoff area.
And so what did you guys do? Did you guys just leave at that point?
Yeah, the car ended up start. It took like a minute for the car to start, but we ended up driving out of there. We ended up driving to the left, and I was kind of like, to be honest with you, I didn't know how to feel. I was kind of like upset and pissed off and like scared at the same time. I really didn't know actually how to feel. It was such a weird feeling, like, because I was like angry because I was that scared.
Yeah, be careful out there, man. Be real careful out there. And, it's like a bad horror film. You can't start your car. You just got a rock thrown at you and you can't start the car. One thing I will tell you, though, if you feel like you're being watched, or if you get a sense that they're around, you're probably right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's just you get hypersensitive. I know what I feel. I get hypersensitive when they're in the area, or they're like coming pretty close to the car, or like wherever I'm at in the woods and they're there. You definitely get hypersensitive, and your awareness goes up of like your surroundings and what's moving, and you're on like high alert.
Yeah.
But yeah. I was thinking if it was somebody else out there throwing a rock, that's a good way to get shot. You know what I mean? Like, you're throwing rocks at people's cars in the middle of nowhere. It's a good way to get shot.
It's a great way to get shot. You're absolutely right. What do you think?
That's what I was thinking.
What do you think that these things are, Vincent? If someone were to ask you, what do you think Sasquatch is? And I know you're out looking for them, and please be careful while you do that. But if someone were to ask you, what do you think Sasquatch is, what would you say to them? To be honest with you, Wes, I want to see the face. To be quite honest with you, I really. I mean, they act like, apex predators in the woods.
I mean, I feel like they're an animal of some sort. They definitely display a lot of characteristics of, you know, of some sort of predator in the animal kingdom. So I kind of think that they're an animal. I would like to believe so. You know, I don't have that much, you know, information on them, or, you know, I don't have a lot of experience, you know, per se with the few interactions that I've had with them. But I would like to think that there's some sort of animal. I mean, that's just how I feel. I don't know how anybody else feels.
No, you could be right. You could be 100% right on it. And they do act like animals, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things that they do that are very similar to animals, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, be safe while you're out there, Vincent. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your encounter. Yeah,
thank you very much for having me, Wes.
And that's it for tonight, everyone. We're going to close out with a band from the UK. They're called Fabric, Fabrik, and the name of the song is Black Lake. If you get a chance, check them out on iTunes and Spotify. Until next time, everyone.
Epiphany, bring the shore.